Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Amanda Richards. I'm the Senior Director of Sales Strategy at Chartwell. I'm thrilled to have you joining us for our webinar this afternoon, Understanding Retirement Living Affordability. We know, and as financial professionals, I'm sure you hear it all the time, retirement living is too expensive and there's no way I can afford it. And it's only for millionaires. And our favorite, the one that we use in our ad tagline, do I look like I'm made of money? And we get it, right? It's very common for people considering retirement living or senior living in general to think that it's too expensive and that it costs way more than it would to stay in their current home. So the purpose of today's presentation is to debunk some of that sticker shock and to help everyone understand sort of the true costs and benefits of retirement living. We're going to demystify some common myths about affordability, and we're going to provide some insights and guidance into some of the available options for your clients. We're also going to make sure that we answer any questions you have. So as we move through the content today, if you do have questions, please pop them into the Q&A or into the chat, and we will make sure to address those at the end of the webinar so that everyone hears their answers. We are also recording this session, and we'll make the session recording available to everyone who registers. So not to worry about scribbling notes furiously. If you want to, you can just access the recording later. So with that, let's kick it off, and I'm going to try and navigate these screens here. So those of you who may not be familiar with Chartwell, we are one of the largest providers of retirement living in Canada. We operate over 160 locations across 4 provinces, Ontario, BC, Alberta, and Quebec. We are traded on the TSX, and we're governed by a board of 7 independent directors. We're affiliated with a number of provincial associations across the country, and what this means for our residents is that we are accountable for safety, quality standards, and we're also held to the highest industry standards across each province nationwide. At Chartwell, we work with loved ones and their families every day to find optimal solutions to their current situations. We meet thousands of senior prospects every year, and we hear their stories, we learn about their challenges, and we work through the scenarios to accommodate their needs. So all this to say, we're really well versed in the needs and wants of our senior clients, and we're really well positioned to help you as financial advisors or financial professionals help your clients understand and proactively plan for retirement living. So let's dive right in. We're going to start with planning for the cost of living and care. And when clients are deciding or considering retirement living, it's essential to recognize not only the emotional and the physical benefits, but also the financial considerations that come with this transition. Retirement living offers a structured environment that enhances well-being by providing access to healthcare, recreational activities, and social interactions that can help mitigate those feelings of loneliness and isolation common among seniors who are living independently in their own homes. There was a study that was done by the Journal of Aging Studies that found that seniors who move into retirement communities report higher levels of happiness and engagement due to those increased opportunities for socialization and purposeful on-site support. However, the costs that are associated with this lifestyle can be a major concern for many. In Canada, retirement residences range in price depending on factors like the location and the amenities that are offered. The Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation reported that the average monthly cost of living in a retirement residence in Canada in 2023, the last time this was published, ranged from $3,000 to $5,500 a month, with residences in urban settings like Toronto or Vancouver reaching upwards of $8,000 a month or more. And so for financial planners, it's really essential to guide clients in understanding these costs early on. Many clients fail to plan adequately for these expenses, assuming that government pensions or savings are going to cover the cost of care. But helping clients to fully understand the anticipated cost of living associated with retirement living is a crucial first step. Changing slides on one and not the other. There we go. So there's Ted Brackenford, who's the president and CEO of TriDelta Financial Partners, emphasized that a lot of families underestimate the cost of retirement living, which in turn could lead to that sticker shock. There was also some data that was published in Statistica that the average annual cost for private retirement residences in Canada has increased by approximately 4.2% annually between 2018 and 2023. And so, for financial planners working with clients considering retirement living, it's essential to identify and integrate all of the potential income streams to cover these costs. Government benefits such as the Old Age Security and the CPP may provide some assistance, but they often fall short of covering the total full cost of care. In 2023, the maximum monthly benefit for CPP was $1,306, and it was approximately $615 for OAS. So, making it really evident that most clients are going to need to find some additional revenue streams to cover the cost of whatever living situation they choose. Dr. Amy Dupree also emphasizes the importance of proactive planning, especially when it comes to maintaining independence and quality of life in later years. Research from the American Psychological Association shows that individuals who plan for aging and adapt their environment early on reported greater satisfaction in their later years. Financial planners can play a pivotal role by integrating and initiating conversations with their clients about housing and care preferences, as well as legal considerations, things like power of attorney or wills, and then strategies for covering those costs of aging earlier in their conversations. A strategy that financial planners can offer clients is incorporating retirement residences into those overall retirement plans. So we often hear people say they want to live life to their fullest in retirement. They want to travel, they want to pursue their hobbies and interests and passions, and then they plan for end of life funerals. But we forget about that sort of chunk of time in between, right? That time of life when the travel plans may have subsided, maybe we're no longer able to do that, but we're not yet ready for a funeral. There is a time that we need to plan for in between. Early planning may include allocating specific savings or investments towards future housing needs, or establishing a trust that ensures that funds are available for retirement living without diminishing the overall estate. According to Canadian Life and Health Insurance Association, many Canadians are underprepared for the high costs of senior living, and only 30% have made financial provisions for it. So helping clients to generate and create a comprehensive retirement plan that accounts for these healthcare and housing costs, as well as estate preservation, can provide peace of mind and ensure that they're well positioned for the future. So one of the most popular sentiments that's voiced by Canadians is that people want to stay in their own homes for as long as they can because it's the most affordable option. We're conditioned to believe that our provincial healthcare systems are going to provide access to resources as we need them so that we can stay in our homes. And while this is generally the intention, there are considerations that factor in this scenario, and there are costs that are associated with choosing to remain in one's own home. Let's take a look at some of those. For clients who opt to age in their own home and they only consider a move to a retirement living or long-term care or another setting of some kind if all other options have been exhausted, there are some financial implications to think through. Firstly, depending on the health and wellness requirements of the client, aging at home might not be as simple as continuing with their current status quo. Even for senior clients who are relatively healthy and cognitively well, there will likely come a time when additional support is required for them to live well at home. Provisions exist in each province for seniors to access funded home care delivered within the confines of their home. And access to these services is dependent on a medical assessment, the outcome of which is going to dictate the volume and the type and the frequency of the care services that the individual is entitled to. Should an individual wish to access additional care services, they also have the option to do so as a private pay option. So, for example, if you have a client who, say, qualifies for some assistance with bathing every week, but they want to have a bathing assistance every day, they could top up their funded services with some private pay options to have someone come in and provide those extra 6 days of bathing assistance each week. The costs that are associated with home care vary by province, but generally they start in about the $25 an hour range for non-care services. So that would be things like assistance with meal preparation or transportation to and from activities or appointments, things like that, to about $35 an hour for personal care services. And then should someone require the assistance of a licensed nurse, the cost is significantly higher and generally starts in that $50 to $60 an hour range. The second consideration is that of the actual home itself. So, in some cases, a current home is not conducive to the changing needs of an aging client, and the home needs to be retrofitted to accommodate specific needs. And we've all seen the commercials for those cutout tubs or the grab bars, the stair lifts. Those things can be installed for moderate costs. In more extreme circumstances, though, homes might need to be retrofitted or modified to accommodate wheelchairs or mobility devices, in which case the cost of those renovations to expand door frames or lower the countertops or install ramps, that can be a little bit higher, but can be factored in. And then, in addition to the expense of retrofitting the home, people also need to think about how those home modifications are going to affect the resale value of the property once the client's no longer living there. Homes with modifications sometimes need to be refinished to reverse the changes or accept a lower listing price, as it's sometimes difficult to find buyers for those properties once the home has been modified. So we understand that living at home is not free, but it's still a popular misconception. So to help articulate this to your clients, there's four things that you can consider. The first is daily living expenses. So when you add up all of the monthly and annual costs for your clients who run and live in their home, you might be surprised to find how much they spend each month to maintain that quality of life. The second is the home ownership expenses. Even if your clients are now living mortgage free, there are expenses, as we know, with owning a home or renting an apartment. So things like those property taxes or utility bills or insurance and condo fees, and the list goes on and on. Third is the cost of home care. So depending on your province of residence, home care costs can vary widely, as we previously mentioned. And without realizing it, your client could be spending, upwards of tens of thousands of dollars per year in home care costs if significant healthcare requirements are needed. And then don't forget, there's also additional costs with things like meal delivery or housekeeping or snow shoveling or home repairs and maintenance, things that maybe we're doing on our own in our own homes now, but we would need to layer in those costs if care services were required and we're also no longer able to do those things. And then finally, it's really important to add in the cost of staying social. Research continues to show how important it is to stay social in our retirement years. And for those people who take this to heart, there's still a cost involved. So transportation costs of things like cars or taxis or car insurance or maintaining a vehicle. There's entertainment costs. If you're going out for coffees or meals with friends or other recreational endeavors like exercise classes or shopping trips or just going out to the theater. All of those things can add up. It's important that we account for them in the financial plan. Perhaps the most common question we hear next to how much does it cost to live in retirement living is, how do people afford it? How do they do it? Before we dive into these strategies to afford senior living, let's actually review how much we're talking about. So the average cost of a one-bedroom suite with services in a retirement residence, not Chartwell specifically, but just sort of industry-wide across Canada, is about $4,500 a month if you're living in Alberta, around $6,000 a month in Vancouver, around $5,500 in Ontario. And in Quebec, the model is slightly different. There's a slightly different model there. So residences operate in a more independent way with a lot of a la carte services. So the average rate in Quebec is around $2,000 a month. The other important consideration is the length of stay. So, how long is someone actually living in retirement and paying these monthly fees? In Ontario, Alberta, and BC, the average length of stay is around 2 years. While in Quebec, if people are coming in a little bit earlier and staying a little bit longer, it tends to be around 4 years. So then, how do your clients afford this? How do they plan for 2 to 3 years of these expenses? Well, the first and the most common strategy is to safely invest the proceeds from the sale of someone's home. When a client moves into retirement living, in most cases, they're selling their current home. So if you take an example of the average home price in Canada, which is now just over $717,000, depending on where your clients live, their home could likely sell for much more. If, for example, a home was sold though at that average rate of $717,000 and the client invested those proceeds in a portfolio that could yield a 4% return, that would bring in just over $2,390 a month. If you're willing to take on a little more risk and say you're able to invest in something that's going to yield around 5%, now you'd have $2,987 a month to put towards the cost of living in a retirement residence. Getting my slides mixed up here. So how about funding options if your clients aren't ready to sell? Depending on where your clients live and their unique situation, it might not be the right time for them to sell their home. And in some instances, real estate prices have dropped in the area, or perhaps they still have a spouse or an adult child at home. They don't want to sell the family home. Someone's still going to be living there. This doesn't have to hold them back from considering retirement living. There are low-cost options like a line of credit or a reverse mortgage that they can also consider. Clients could also consider leveraging additional assets they no longer use or desire to offset some of the cost. So, for example, if there's a recreational vehicle or a boat or a cottage or an investment property that they're no longer using, they can also sell that to offset some of the cost of retirement living. And then finally, there's the government benefits and tax savings that can assist with affordability. So in addition to CPP and old age security, there are a couple of tax credits that clients can apply for, including the disability tax credit or medical expense tax credits. And there's also financial support options available for veterans through Veterans Affairs. There are also additional tax benefits that are to be had each year when someone resides in a retirement residence, as the residence is going to provide a breakdown of the charges for care and services, which can be claimed towards the federal attendant care tax certificate. So when you're exploring retirement living and working through the associated costs, we're often asked by prospective residents and their families how they can afford senior living while also preserving an inheritance for their children. And when these questions are presented to us, we want to connect our prospects with our network of financial professionals like yourselves. We're not equipped to answer those questions, but we know that you are. And we understand there's numerous ways that our seniors can maximize their portfolios depending on the size of the portfolio and their risk tolerance, but we're going to leave all of those things to you. You as the experts can answer those questions. We also understand that talking about money with loved ones can sometimes be a bit of a tricky topic. And it's imperative that your clients express their wishes for future support needs, as well as how they plan to fund it. And that their adult children, if applicable, also understand their wishes as well. So while a conversation about finances can be really awkward, it's even more so when the wishes of the client are not fully understood or agreed upon by the family, or someone has to make decisions really, really quickly, or unfortunately, sometimes when that battle over the money starts. So it's really important to have these conversations proactively. Another common question, as we mentioned, is how far will my money go in a retirement residence? So if your clients are trying to determine how long they can stay in a residence comfortably, we recommend leveraging your expertise and working through some income planning projections. Where we can assist is with some of the data to help with these projections. So it's really important to fully understand the cost of care in a retirement residence your client is considering, as well as how those costs might change over time. So it's really highly recommended that people visit several residences in their area and gather information about the starting rates, as well as the rates for any additional care services that might be needed over time. So there's a number of factors that need to be considered when you're putting together this sort of estimated cost for retirement living in the residence that your client prefers. So you're going to want to consider things like the rate of the suite type. So are they looking for somewhere where they can have a 1-bedroom suite, or are they looking for a 2-bedroom, and what's included in that rate? You're also going to want to understand whether the rates in the residence that they're considering are bundled, like all-inclusive rates that include all of their meals and care and services, or if it's more of an a la carte model, then what are the a la carte pricing? This is really important because the overall rate might look a lot lower at one residence compared to another, but you have to make sure you're comparing apples to apples and that you've got the rate for all of the care and services included. You also want to understand the rates for any additional services or care. So if your client requires some assistance with their activities of daily living, or if they have a diagnosis that might signal that they're going to require care in the future, you can start to look at what those care costs are and factor them into the plan. And then the amount of time that your client is planning to live in the residence is probably the most important one and the most difficult to figure out. It's particularly difficult because people often underestimate or overestimate their health and wellness. Sometimes people move into a residence because they're no longer thriving at home, and then they experience this surge in their quality of life once they move in because all of a sudden they're social, they're active, someone's providing 3 nutritious meals a day, their medications are monitored and delivered appropriately, and they start to thrive again. Other times, diseases progress more rapidly than we anticipate, or there's sudden health crisis that shortens someone's length of stay. So, research into this topic shows that the average length of stay across the country is around 2 to 4 years. But again, this is dependent on the individual's unique circumstances. So, difficult to plan for, but really important that we try our best. There are a number of ways that residents who are living with us afford retirement living. But when I think of this, my favorite example comes from one of our longtime residents, is Shirley Cook. Now, Shirley lives in one of our residences in Ontario. And when she stumbled across a Facebook post a couple of years ago, there was a post on the Chartwell page where a user shared, in her opinion, retirement homes were too expensive and that seniors were better off staying in their homes. Now, Shirley chimed in saying, and I quote, I would debate that. I live in a Chartwell home. My life is richer and I am more independent living here. I do not need to depend on family or friends for companionship or help. It is a matter of personal choice, and I chose this life over one alone in an apartment needing support. I'm never alone, and help is always one call well away. So she posted some additional comments about her life at Chartwell and even shared how she funds it. So, as you might appreciate, her comments caught our attention, and we asked if she might be willing to help others understand retirement living affordability as well, which she graciously agreed to do. So we asked Shirley to share her initial thoughts on retirement homes' monthly rental cost. And she said, I told myself I couldn't afford it. It was my kids who helped change my mind. They were very good at saying to me, you've got the money, use it. And I remember saying to my son at one point, I want to keep my savings for when I'm older. And he replied, Mom, you're already there. What are you saving for, if not this? So today I use my pension and my savings to pay for my monthly rent, and I get back almost $2,000 in tax credits each year. What I didn't realize was how little money you need beyond your rent. There are some people here who don't spend anything beyond rent and cable. Everything except additional care is included: food, activities, housekeeping, laundry services, and anything I pay extra for is my choice, like the insurance for my car, internet, and my cell phone. So, what I think is so valuable about this example is that it highlights two things for us. First, there's fewer costs outside of the basic monthly fee than people realize. And second, for many people, it can be difficult to give themselves permission to spend money on themselves. And it's really important that we help them understand that it's okay. Often people have planned and saved for this stage in life, but then they find it hard to turn that switch from saving to spending when they focus their whole lives on putting money away. Think about how conditioned we are in our everyday activities to sock away that money for retirement, for when we need it. We've been conditioned for a long time. So, of course, it's important to seek financial advice to ensure that a client's resources will go to the distance with them. But even in cases where your clients are financially comfortable, they still might find it hard to give themselves permission to use that money to make their lives better and more enjoyable. So, as I said, from that young age, we just save, save, save. And now all of a sudden we're told it's okay, you can spend it. It's a real difficult thing to flip that switch. So both of those scenarios can make it difficult for a senior client to give themselves permission to spend money on themselves in their later years. They're conditioned to save, and they want to save something for their children or for their legacy. And as Dr. Amy Dupree points out in our Affording Senior Living Guide, which you can download on our website, a client using their money for themselves can be more complicated if their children aren't as supportive of this. So some adult children want to see their parents use the money for themselves, And then there are still some circumstances, and we encounter this, where adult children might be having some financial issues, or they're just banking on that inheritance for themselves. And then they might start to question, whether mom or dad need to spend the funds on retirement living or any other type of care or services. This often creates family conflict or a rift as an older adult is involved, and they're trying to forego what's best for the parent to help them with their own financial issues. So these can be really, really challenging situations. However, there are some things that you can do to determine if your clients are making decisions for themselves that are truly in their best interests. So we understand that often people having spent so much time putting other people's needs first that they don't even think about what they might need, right? This question becomes even more important as people age, and it becomes apparent that they benefit from a shift in their living situation to have accommodations that are going to support their changing care needs. As financial professionals, your clients might seek advice from you for not only your professional expertise, but also as someone who's not as emotionally involved in the decision. You have the opportunity to offer guidance to your clients and help them understand the costs associated with any of the options they're considering away from the family dinner table and in sort of a more unbiased setting. So, what we can share is that many people who eventually make the move to a retirement residence say they wish they'd done it sooner, right? They often delay moving because they struggle to give themselves permission to use their money to make their lives richer and happier and safer. So if your clients are struggling with this concept, know that they're not alone, right? It's difficult to have that mind shift, but when someone gives themselves that permission to spend their money on the things they need to live better, they are grateful. So, taking into consideration everything that we've talked about today, we're now in a position where we can outline some of the components of a proactive plan that you can use for your clients. This is a really practical piece. So, you can design a plan for clients to address their own needs or to help a client plan for the needs of an aging loved one. In either case, there are four main action items that you need to complete that are going to ensure that this is a well-rounded plan. So the first is to document your client's preferences regarding their healthcare, living arrangements, and support needs. To do this, we recommend that you compile a detailed record of your client's healthcare preferences, including the type of care. So, do they have preventative care measures or disease management, whatever that looks like? Should it be required? And then any specific medical treatments that they prefer to avoid. So, this is a really difficult part of the conversation, but very essential. You have to consider the family history and any certain medical conditions or chronic conditions that your client has as part of this record. You're also going to want to discuss and document preferences for living arrangements. So whether they prefer to age in place in their own home or consider a move to a senior living community. If this is the case, you also want to identify which communities they prefer and what type of accommodations would be of interest. So this is going to help you in creating a more comprehensive plan, as the prices and the availability are going to vary by property. And then finally, as part of this step, you're going to need to identify the types of support that might be needed, such as personal care support or housekeeping, meal preparation, transportation, and social activities. And this is going to help in planning for home care services or for selecting an appropriate retirement residence for your client. The second thing we're going to want to do is review your client's financial capacities to support the care and services that they need. So here you're going to perform a tentative cost analysis by assessing the costs that are associated with the healthcare setting they've selected. So whether that's living at home with some home care services or retirement living or waiting until long-term care is needed, you're going to want to look at each of those. And remember, for long-term care, it's not possible to proactively apply to be on a long-term care wait list, but you can proactively apply or plan for the costs, right? These are fixed costs across each province. So if you know that someone is going to want to go to long-term care eventually, you can research the cost in your province and then look at that along with the average length of stay to make your projections. Next, it's recommended that you review your client's monthly income sources and then assess to determine how they can fund their future care needs. So if a client is considering a retirement home, for example, are they going to be selling their home and accessing the equity in there to offset those costs? Are they going to be tapping into other savings to pay the monthly services? What's it going to look like? And then finally, it's important to evaluate the insurance coverage and government benefits that can be accessed to supplement portions of the care and services that your client might require. So you're going to want to evaluate any existing healthcare or health insurance plans that your client might have, as well as long-term care insurance policies if they have them, to understand what's covered and then if there are any gaps that need to be addressed. The third thing we're going to want to do is update the legal documents. So ensure that any advance directives, such as living wills or healthcare directives, are current and accurately reflect your client's wishes. These documents should comply with provincial regulations. You're also going to want to make sure that powers of attorney for both finance and personal care are in place, and that the people who are appointed as power of attorney for both of those know who they are and what their responsibilities are in regards to that, as well as your client's wishes. You're going to want to also review your client's will to make sure that it's up to date and it reflects all of their current needs, desires, and wishes. And then the fourth and final action item is to develop this comprehensive care plan. So this plan should cover any immediate healthcare needs, including short-term recovery or rehabilitation plans. And this is something that a lot of people don't actually realize about retirement living, is that we do offer the ability to recover after a medical procedure, like a hip surgery or a fall, in one of our residences for a short-term stay. This is a respite stay, and respite stays are available in most retirement residences, and they cover a wide range of care and services. So these stays often include a furnished suite, they have meals, they have access to all the amenities, and then healthcare services that a client requires. If your client is planning to remain at home with home care services, it's still recommended that you identify a place where they can recuperate or recover if there is an emergency, or if a family caregiver is away, or if they do have some kind of a medical need to recover from a surgery or an illness. In addition to those immediate needs, the care plan should also take into consideration short-term needs, long-term needs, and emergency planning. So outline the plans for the next few years, considering any potential changes in health and mobility, and this might include arranging for periodic home care services or planning for a gradual transition to a senior living community. You also want to develop a long-term care plan that is included in these scenarios, such as significant health deterioration. What happens if someone's health deteriorates rapidly or very quickly, or more than you thought was going to happen? What if they need additional care services right away? You're going to want to identify any preferred retirement residences or long-term care homes and understand the application and the waiting lists for all of them. And then finally, your care plan should also include a contingency plan for unexpected health issues or emergencies. So this includes having emergency contacts, a list of medications, and a plan for rapid access to medical care. Completing each of these steps requires some time and some difficult conversations, but they can save a lot of headaches and put your client's mind at ease, knowing that everything is set and ready for if and when they need it. Okay. So there's also some proactive steps that you can suggest to help clients help themselves familiarize themselves with their options and ensure that they're selecting a residence or a senior living lifestyle that best suits their needs and their wants and their budget. At Chartwell, we're really fortunate to have retirement living consultants at each of our locations. So these professionals are actually available to meet with you and or your clients to answer any questions you might have about living at Chartwell. Additionally, they're really well connected in their local communities, and they can serve as conduits to local resources and partners for you. So if you're interested in meeting with a retirement living consultant in your area, please visit us online at chartwell.com, and we can make arrangements for an introduction. You can also send us an email at partnership@chartwell.com if you'd like an introduction to a specific residence. Then finally, we spent a lot of time reviewing some of the key components of retirement living affordability, and I hope you found the information in today's session helpful. Everything that we discussed is also available in our Retirement Living Affordability Guide, which you can download right from our website. And if you'd like additional information or if you have any questions, we also invite you to reach out to us anytime. So with that, I'm going to leave this slide up to encourage people to download that information. And I will ask Marielle if there are any questions that came in through the chat while I was talking.
There are no questions so far.
Excellent. If anyone has questions or comments or you would like more information, please feel free to reach out to us at partnership@chartwell.com. It's our email address, or you can visit us at chartwell.com and talk to us anytime. You can submit your questions in our chat. You can request a tour of any of our residences or request to be put in touch with a retirement living consultant at the Chartwell location in your area. And with that, we will give everyone 9 minutes back in their day. Thank you for your time and attention. Hope you found the information in today's session valuable, and we look forward to seeing you in our next webinar series, which for financial professionals, I believe will be coming up in October. Thanks, everyone.